Welcome to our video of how to play Deadzone, part 2. This is the additional rules and special rules that you will need to know to play the game. Since we've already gone over the core rules, if you haven't watched that, click right here and go watch that video before watching this one, because this is going to be a little bit more detailed and you'll need to know the basics to go on. Without further ado, let's jump into the additional rules.
In the Deadzone universe, there are explosive weapons that can cause havoc on the enemy team. To represent this, there's a scatter rule. Weapons like frag grenades or mortars can cause a unit to scatter. In order to represent this, you would roll an 8-sided die to represent an adjacent cube. This is best done by assigning a value to each cube surrounding the model being affected. For instance, this cube would be represented by a 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, giving you 8 results possible. When that's done, you can roll your dice, and seeing as how the value is 7, he would be scattered from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 square, causing him to go down a level in the pinned position. If, for instance, he were to have rolled a 1, he would have landed in a situation where he could have landed on this square half occupied by a bridge. In events like this, it's best to give it a 50-50 chance on whether or not he misses the bridge or not. Luckily, we're playing with dice, the epitome of chance. We would say that on a 5-up, he would miss the bridge and fall down 2 levels.
If a model is dislodged from their current location into a different cube, and the result is the force of falling, this is represented by a 3-dice survival test for the model against the power of gravity, which in this case is a 3-dice 5-up test, with 1 more die per level he falls. In this case, it would be 4 dice, but if he fell from up here down to here, gravity would get 5 dice against his 3. The damage is worked out just like a shoot or fight stat, where if the gravity wins against the survive, the amount it wins by in successes is how many points of potential damage the model will take. Being slammed into walls is caused by weapons that have the ability called knockback, which we will get into in just a second. It can also be from a previously mentioned scatter weapon, say a frag grenade going off in a cube next to him, and the force of the explosion throwing him to the side into a wall. Like all dice tests, you would roll the survive and the strength of the wall to see if there's any potential damage.
To further spice up the game of Deadzone, models can have abilities that impact the way that they can perform certain actions and give them penalties or bonuses in certain situations.
This allows each model to be unique in the way that it is able to carry out various actions, and that is represented by these abilities.
Here we have an Indige model with the Agile ability. Agile allows a unit to make either a move or sprint action, and immediately afterwards change a level, assuming it's in the same cube stack, meaning this tower here, for example.
Next, we have the AP rule. AP represents armor-piercing ability for the weapon. The Grogan on the left is equipped with an AP2 gun called a Desolator. The number behind the AP is how many points of armor that gun is able to ignore when resulting in potential damage. If the Grogan is to fire at the Enforcer's armor of 1 would not hold up against the AP2 of the weapon. If the AP of the weapon is higher than the armor of the target, the armor is completely ignored, resulting in immediate potential damage.
Beast is an ability granted to some of the more savage models available in Deadzone. All this means is that units with the Beast ability cannot pick up or use items.
The Sorak on the left has a blaster, which has the special rule called Blast. A blast weapon itself is not a physically harming weapon. It basically throws the target around in hopes that it'll slam into walls or fall off of buildings. In order for Blast to work, the Sorak would roll a shoot stat against the Enforcer's survive stat. After comparing, if the Sorak got more than the Enforcer follows the scatter rules as previously mentioned and is thrown about in a random cube direction. After the direction is determined, the model is then pinned or damaged if it's slammed into a wall or falls off of a building. If the Sorak does not score more than the Enforcer, the blast weapon will actually just pin whoever is in the cube. No questions asked.
Boom, spelled all caps with an exclamation point, is an ability for some of the more sneaky and lethal devices in the universe. This boombot, for example, when destroyed, would detonate, or it could choose to detonate by itself by taking a special action. Regardless of the cause, when this explosion goes off, it is treated as if a frag grenade went off in that square.
The construct rule is essentially for non-living beings that are not affected by certain weaponry as if they were alive. For example, a pinned result cannot happen to a machine because they're not afraid for ducking for cover. Found in campaigns, the ability called Covering Fire allows the user of the rapid fire rule for firing for effect an additional +1 to the already normally additional +1, resulting in 5 dice for every firing for effect roll, which helps in suppressing enemy units.
Deadeye is an ability reserved for the real straight shooters. In effect, it gives weapons 1 additional range value. This flamethrower weapon normally has a range of 2 cubes. However, this model has the Deadeye ability, meaning it could actually reach 3 cubes away, meaning that it could fire on this model here.
The engineer rule allows any model with this rule, if they are to go in, pick up an item, and that item is revealed to be booby-trapped, they are clever and savvy enough to disarm the explosive, while also only sacrificing their activation instead of getting blown up. Engineers go hand in hand with the remote ability as well. Engineers are able to command remote objects as long as they're within 3 cubes of it and use the remote as if it was a model. Otherwise, the remote object just stays in idle. The experimental rule is for weapons that have not been fully tested and are quite dangerous or very variable. So far, I think the only unit that has this is the Plague Enforcer. Essentially, when you want to do a shoot action, you roll on a chart to see what the weapon does because it's so variable. On a 1 to 2, you get the blast effect. On a 3 to 4, the weapon gains the knockback effect. On a 5 through 6, they gain weight of fire 2, which we will discuss in a second. On a 7, they get an AP 3, or on an 8, the weapon starts becoming more and more dangerous with an ominous hum, where the owning model gains the Boom 1 ability until the end of the game. Each time this is rolled, the boom becomes larger and larger, essentially creating a ticking time bomb for that model. For characters in the Deadzone universe who are John Woo fans, fire control allows them to fire 2 separate weapons at either 1 unit or 2. These are rolled separately from each other, since different weapons can have different values. A weapon with the frag ability sends off an explosion and an exploding shrapnel which can cause damage. It's essentially like blast, but with an added bonus to it. In this example, the Yindige will throw a grenade into the Peacekeeper's cube. They roll their test. For this, you do the frag in parentheses number of dice, so in this case I believe it would be 3, to the survival stat of the Peacekeeper. The explosion is resolved. If the target misses, they are still thrown. After rolling this test, you result the potential damage. If no potential damage is caused, usually by result of the surviving model rolling better than the frag model, then nothing happens in terms of harm. If, however, the frag gets more successes, you resolve the potential damage on the model. In both cases, the model is then thrown as if a blast had gone off in that cube, assigning a random cube direction and rolling scatter. From there, you would result with any sort of slammed effects or falling off of objects effects.
Frenzy is an ability for the most ferocious fighters in the galaxy. For example, this Brocker is so hot-tempered, his attacks in close combat are difficult to deflect. This is represented by giving any model with the Frenzy ability the option to re-roll any failed die result in their fight test. And the number in parentheses next to this ability represents how many of these dice can be re-rolled. If it's a 1, only 1 failed dice can be re-rolled. However, this is variable depending on the number in parentheses.
This is how a roll might look. With 2 successes and 1 miss, he's able to re-roll the 1 miss, resulting in 3 successes. A little tidbit here is if he would have rolled an 8 and then rolled an additional die, missed with that die, he would be able to re-roll that as his 1 in the parentheses.
Please, for a second, we beg of you, just pretend that this is a craw. We do not have a model with the glide ability. However, if we did, the model with the ability glide would not suffer any damage if he were to be thrown from any height. In addition, when descending from a high level, they have the option to move however many units away from their initial position as they are high up. So for instance, this model is 2 cubes high, meaning that he could move 2 spaces away from his resting position, like a Wright brother.
All grenades in Deadzone work in the same manner. Essentially, all grenades are range 3, and you need 1 success on your shoot stat in order for them to go in the direction you want. So, this Assault Enforcer sees a juicy cube full of rebel goodness to blow up. What he's going to do is roll his 3 dice. If he gets 1 success on his shoot stat of 5 or higher, the grenade will go off in the cube, affecting all the models. If, for example, he doesn't, and he misses, you would roll as if this is the target you wanted to get, but you roll the scatter, resulting in a variety of different options. When Forge Fathers are in trouble, they can use a special action to call in the highly elite Hammer Fist Drop Armor troops, or Bjarn's Darnafall. Ascending from out of orbit, a model using the Hammer Fist Drop Armor will land in an unoccupied cube after the special action is called in. The force of the superhero landing is so powerful that it causes a 3 dice 4-up test against the survival stat of adjacent models. Essentially, after resulting in the potential damage, the target model is then thrown 1 cube and pinned, if it weren't a construct. Hammer Fist models also count as having jump packs.
Some cumbersome weapons have the heavy ability. This means that firing them counts as a long action, meaning that a holder of a heavy weapon cannot move and shoot this item. In addition, any model with a heavy weapon suffers a -1 penalty when rolling his fight stat.
When finesse and strategy are just way too complicated for your lower brain functions of being a plague zombie, you can resort to the Horde special rule. Instead of getting an additional fight for a friendly model attacking, you get +1 per friendly model, which, unless you're Brad Pitt in the middle of the zombie apocalypse, like this red right here, you might be doomed.
Some weapons, like mortars or this Asterian drone, have the indirect fire ability. This means that they could, in theory, fire at a model that they do not have line of sight on. Firing an indirect weapon is a long action. Because of the lobbed nature of the ammunition, an indirect firing weapon cannot fire at a target within 2 squares of the firing model. To begin, firing an indirect weapon requires a 3 dice hit or shoot test and requires at least 1 success. However, if you do not have line of sight, you need 2 successes. If you do not pass this test, then the shot scatters and follows the scatter rule. If the indirect fire hits, then damage is resolved like a grenade. A 4-up test of however many dice indicated in parentheses is then used to determine whether or not the unit is damaged, and to what extent. And then they are thrown around, as if they were scattered.
In the Invigorate special rule, primarily used by the Psyker, the Chovar Psyker, but also in future renditions, hopefully combat drugs and other stimulants, is a rule that is quite powerful. So, the Chovar Psychic is the one with the Invigorate rule. He rolls on a shoot test needing 2 results of success, and if he gets that off, he can take away activation token from a nearby friendly model. By taking this away, it opens up lots of options for the model to do a brand new set of actions.
Weapons, like chemical throwers or flamethrowers, have the ability to turn good attorneys like Harvey Dent into ruthless, melted villains like Two-Face, or these zombies into smoldering piles of ash. To make a shoot action with an It Burns weapon, you must first choose a target in a cube. However, this weapon affects all models in the cube. If a model is on fire before it begins its activation, it must take a special action to put out the flames. This is resolved with a special survive test. The model surviving will roll a 3-dice survive test, and to represent the danger of the fire, a 3-dice 4-up test will be rolled against it. If there are an equal amount of successes or the surviving model outrolls the fire, then the fire is put out and no penalties are incurred. However, if the surviving model fails this test, then the model takes however much damage as based on the number of successes the fire got, plus an AP1 bonus must be incurred, and the model counts as being activated. The fire is then put out.
You decide. The Enforcer Peacekeeper has a knockback weapon. This is the Energy Gauntlet. A knockback weapon is a weapon that causes such force that it throws the enemy away. This is also found in some shooting attacks as well. There's a bit of controversy with this rule. Some say that when the unit uses this weapon, that the target that is attacking is automatically thrown, regardless of who won the test. Others would say that they have to win the test in order for this ability to occur. Let me know what you think in the comments below, but I personally lean towards the effect always happening, while Tim leans on the other way, saying that he thinks they have to win the test before the combat effect is applied. Whatever your school of thought, the knockback weapon is primarily used to push things out of cubes that you don't want them in. Mostly objectives. Let's say that the Enforcer does come into the square, coming in this way, wins the test, and uses the knockback ability. It would push the dog into the wall, causing a slammed effect. If, however, he came in from this way, and won against the dog, and throws it back, it would just knock it back into this empty cube. It's always worked out directly away.
A model with the life support ability has a high-tech medical suite. This allows them, if they should sustain injuries, to immediately revert back to their uninjured state. This can only happen once per game, and it only affects the model with the ability. Note that life support cannot prevent any fatal injuries occurred.
As I can't currently find my mortar, please bear with me while we use a boombot to replace. Next up on the docket, we have the loader ability. This ability is used for big, cumbersome weapons that shoot once and then have a long time to reload. Without a loader, you would put down a long reload counter. This counter would have to be sitting there for an entire round as the single model reloads his weapon. Having a loader present eliminates that and allows you to fire every turn until the loader or the gunner is killed.
A model with the medic ability has the option to heal any unit in the same cube as him of 1 wound. This is a special action and requires no test. Note that the medic can also use this ability on himself.
I don't have a Judoan medic, but they do have the non-combatant rule. Basically, their culture, their religion, their whatever, basically states that they do not want to fight and have no interest in fighting, so they can't make any shoot actions or fight actions, only survive. They are quite peaceful.
Namaste. One use is an ability that says that the model carries an item that can only be used once. For example, the Teraton has a grenade launcher that can only be fired once in the entire game.
The Chovar Psychic has the Psychic ability and is currently one of 2 creatures that has this ability. The Psychic ability is basically a way to open them up to weapons that only they can use, which are psychic attacks or bonuses to friendly models, and they require no line of sight.
When a model with the Rampage ability is injured but not killed, they enter a frenzied state. This means that you need to make some more dice rolls. You roll 1d8, and if the result is a 7 or 8, the model has the option to take an additional move action, as if he were to roll a move command action. He is then able to act as normal. If you roll a 3, 4, 5, or 6, the model activates as normal. However, if you roll a 1 or a 2, then the opposing player is able to activate the model for that turn. Roll better, kid. It'll pay off.
Rapid Fire is a rule that allows you to make the firing for effect rule when shooting. We have already gone into great detail about this, but basically if you win the shot against the survival test of the enemy model, they are pinned.
A model with scavenger ability, like a Z, which we do not have, but this goblin works fine, can hold up to 3 items as opposed to the normal 1. And like an engineer, a scavenger can defuse any booby-trapped items. Dollar bill, y'all.
The Scout ability is a helpful ability contained by those who go in front of the front lines and scout out the enemy. Basically, after you deploy, models with the Scout ability can take 1 free sprint action before anything else happens.
Shield generators work just like energy shields, except they affect the entire cube. As you can see, this Asterian drone is equipped with a shield generator. Anytime a unit in this cube would suffer a wound, they could roll a certain specified amount of dice indicated in brackets, and if they roll a 6 or higher, the wound is ignored. This stacks with the energy shield.
A smokescreen is when a large cloud of smoke occupies a cube. This essentially means that all line of sight going through and around the cube is then blocked. To see if the smoke stays, you roll a die. On a 5 through 8, it dissipates. On a 1 through 4, it stays. This is the same as a toxic smokescreen, with the exception that a toxic smokescreen makes all things in the cube vulnerable. If 2 opposing forces are in the same cube with a smokescreen, and one of them wishes to break away, it is assumed that they are close enough and they can see and or smell, or however they will know that the other person is there, and they will fight as normal as the person tries to leave the cube. A sniper scope is a scope that is attached to a weapon to make them a deadly piece of gear in a dead zone. A sniper scope grants 2 additional dice to any shoot tests and is extremely powerful and awesome.
A unit with the solid ability put their Timberlands on in the morning, which means they cannot be affected by any blast or knockback abilities. Strategist is a campaign ability that you can upgrade as you proceed through the storyline. It essentially allows you to reroll 1 failed result in your recon roll at the beginning of the game. So, Stun is a non-lethal weapon, such as a stun grenade, where this Chovar Psychic has an ability that also has stun. And essentially, it does not cause any damage. However, if hit, the model struck counts as activated.
Some weapons in Deadzone are just plain awesome. This is the suppression rule. You shoot as normal against a target that you want to kill, but no matter what the result, all targets in the cube are pinned because the power of this weapon and the amount of fire just lays down.
A model with the Tactician ability, with the number in brackets, can take an extra command dice corresponding with the number in parentheses. So saying this Orc Commander has a Tactician 2, meaning that he can take 5 command dice instead of 3 at the beginning of every turn that he is alive.
And the Chief Brocker would get 4 because he's Tactician 1. Models with the Tag ability, such as Enforcer Pathfinders, can mark out a target using a special action that gives all friendly models an additional +1 to their shooting for the rest of the round.
Teleport is a special action which allows a model to move 2 spaces even if he does not have a clear path of movement. Vroom.
The fact that special actions are short, and this is a short action, means that a Teraton can go 3 cubes in 1 turn, not needing any sort of direct line to it. That is awesome. That also goes for the Plague Teraton. Tough is an ability that ignores a potential damage point, just like armor, except it cannot be affected by AP, which means that Stage 1A is the coolest thing ever.
A weapon with Toxic will never injure its target. However, if it strikes the opponent, it will make them vulnerable, meaning that the next wound incurred will kill them. Please note, Toxic does not affect constructs or vehicles.
Vehicles such as Striders and bikes work the same way that infantry do, with a few exceptions. Vehicles must be placed on the ground floor of your dead zone, and they cannot climb up buildings because of their large size or their wheel. In addition, they also count as having the solid rule, which essentially means they can't be thrown around by blast weapons, knockback weapons, frag weapons, or anything of the like. When a vehicle is destroyed, it is not removed from play like other models. Instead, they are left as a smoldering pile of ash that must be moved around as they are immobile and stuck where they have been destroyed.
A weapon that is volatile is an incredibly risky move. Anytime a model carrying a volatile weapon takes damage or makes an armor save, you must roll an additional d8. On a result of 2 through 8, nothing happens. But on a 1, bad news. That model is now on fire. And then follows the same rules explained by the It Burns ability. Because of this, the weapon is no longer functional and cannot be used for the rest of the game.
Vulnerable is a rule that means the model that has this cannot be injured and is instead dead on impact. No wounds, just dead. Such examples are the Plague Zombie and the Asterian Ciphers. Remember a while ago when we talked about Frenzy? Well, Weight of Fire is the same thing except for shooting. Basically, this weapon will shoot so much that it's bound to hit something, which is represented by re-rolling a missed dice when you roll to hit. Same thing works with how it works with 8s, which means if you roll an 8 and miss, then you get to try again, as long as it's within your brackets. Welcome to the item lightning round. Alright, so we have the ammo, which gives you +1 for shooting. We have AP ammo, which gives you an AP on your shooting attack. The question mark can either be used as intel or as a booby trap, which goes off as a frag grenade. Speaking of frag grenades, we are right next to a frag grenade, which is an item you can pick up and use just like any other grenade. We also have a smoke grenade, which is the exact same thing, but with a different effect. Smoke dissipates after a while and blocks all line of sight to a cube. We have a medical pack, which eliminates 1 injury point, just like a medic would. We have intel, which is an instant 1 victory point. We have the defender shield, which is awesome. It gives your guy an additional 1 to its armor, and any other size 1 or 2 creatures or other troopers in that cube also benefit by hiding behind the guy with the awesome shield. And finally, we have a sentry gun, which is deployed by engineers mainly through the enforcers, and this has its own stat line. It's basically a weight-of-fire gun that shoots on a 5-up and can be remotely operated. Scratch that, a 4-up, sorry. Some units, especially Asterians, carry around energy shields. Energy shields can be equipped just like any other item to certain factions, and they eliminate potential damage on a 6 or higher as you roll. The amount of dice you get for this is displayed by your energy shield rating, which is in parentheses. We don't have the counter officially for the thermal mine, but the thermal mine is a range F AP3 attack that can be used mainly to blow up vehicles, obviously. Alright, so that's all the items and abilities. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and thanks for sticking through the end. So yeah, we had a great time filming this video and the other one. Please check it out if you haven't already. Don't forget to like if you liked it, subscribe, and please comment down below. Keep rolling 8s, and we will see you next time.
Pain.